So the instruments of the orchestra, the different sections, the different families, I'll try to keep this video as short and concise, to the point, simple as possible. So this is kind of like the orchestra layout, the panning, where each instrument sits. For example, the horns, which are these instruments here, this section, generally in film music they're gonna sit more like to the left side, right? And the trumpets and trombones, usually we're gonna hear them panned a little bit more to the right. So I'm gonna use this one just as a visual guidance for you. All right, so let's start. There are 3 families, right? We've got strings, brass, woodwinds. And I set them in this particular order: strings, brass, woodwinds, because generally in film music, we're gonna use more the strings and then brass and then woodwinds. So the strings are the violins 1, violins 2, violas, cellos, and double basses. And it sounds like this, right? These are strings. That's how the strings sound. Sustained long notes. Now, what I did here is I loaded an ensemble patch, meaning as I was performing, the way they built this patch is they have the double basses here, the cellos in this range here, the violas in this range here, and then the violins 1 and 2 here. Now, I'm not gonna get very technical, but I wanted to talk about the range of each instrument. The lowest note the cello can play is this one, and then generally it can go to the middle C, but it can go higher in register, no problem. Now, this range is also the violas range, so the cellos and violas share a range. So when they put a patch like this together, there's a little bit of overlap. We're gonna have the double basses here, then they're gonna fade out as it gets to the cellos range, and the cellos are gonna kind of like fade out as they get to the violas range, and the violas are gonna fade out as they get to the violins range. And you can hear that happening. Now, we're gonna talk about panning now, or the position. See that the double basses sit to the right of the orchestra and the violins sit to the left of the orchestra. This is what we are going to see happening here as well, right? So if we've got down here, we're playing at the double basses register, they sound a little bit more to the right. If I play the violins, they sound a little bit more to the other side, right? And you can see that transition from double basses, cellos, violas, and violins. You can see it moving. All right, now again, this is a strings ensemble patch. This is very useful because we've got all the strings in one patch. We can also have them separately. For example, I've got just the violins 1 section. So this means that now as I do this, I'm literally just using this section here. This section can be as small as 3, 5, but it can be a bigger section of 6, 8, 12, 14, 16 violins 1, all right? And when the section is like 12 or something like this, it's gonna sound something like this. So those were violins 1. Long notes, I was using a legato patch. We'll talk about articulations in the next video. For now, I just wanted for you to understand each one of the families. So the strings section that we talked about, now I was using the violins 1 section. The violins 2 section is going to sound very similar to violins 1, just a little bit smaller and less power, but now, generally, The violins 1 section is going to be the most important of the 2 violins section. So violins 1 and 2, violins 1 is going to be a slightly bigger section. We're gonna have generally like 14 violins for the violins 1 and then 12 violins for the violins 2 section, 10 violas, 8 cellos. Or if we start with 10, it's gonna be like 10, 8, 6, 4, something like this. So within the strings section, the violins is the section that's gonna go higher in register, meaning it's going to be able to perform higher pitched notes, right? Like this. Now, violas sit in kind of like in the middle when it comes to register in the strings family. So violas. Right? They can go higher. And the way to differentiate the violas and the violins is, again, it's going to be a slightly smaller sound because it's a smaller section. Also, it's going to sound a little bit more towards the right side, as you can see. As opposed as the violins. See, I was performing them in the same register, but the viola sounded a little bit more kind of like in the center, right? And the violins like clearly all the way to the left side. Now, generally, we will consider violins 1, 2, and violas as the highest strings, generally. And then we're going to have the lowest strings where we're going to have the cellos and double basses. Now, the cellos are going to sound very different. So here we've got cellos. So it's like the low register of the cellos. But they can go higher and they're gonna sound very expressive. Generally, they're gonna be in this range though. But sometimes they can play a melody and they are gonna go a little bit higher. And finally, we've got the double basses. Now, the double basses are going to sound lower and they're gonna go lower in register. So just so you hear how they sound. Now, you may be thinking why I am performing the cellos and the double basses in the same place. Well, because the way this particular library is built, I'm going to be performing cellos and double basses in the same range, but actually the double basses are going to sound down an octave. So I was performing them here, but they were actually sounding down an octave. This is just for conveniency, because sometimes the cellos and the double basses will do the same melodic line. The double bass is playing down an octave. If I copy paste the same MIDI region that I recorded for the cellos and I paste it to the double basses, I don't need to move them down an octave. They are going to already sound down an octave using this particular library. Hey, you are halfway through the video. I just want to take a second to appreciate and say thank you for watching our videos and for the time. We appreciate your time so much. If you'd be so kind to comment down below, what's the next video that you'd like to see? What do you want us to talk about? What are the topics that you're interested about? What are the things that will bring value to you? If you could comment down below, what are the things that you'd like to learn from us? What are the concepts that you are struggling with? What are the things that you need? We read those comments. We appreciate your guidance and your advice. Thank you so much. Let's continue to the video. So now strings done. Now we understand the strings. Now let's move to other instruments. Now we're gonna talk about brass, right? And again, same concept. We're gonna have ensemble patches like this one, for example, where I'm going to have the entire brass family. Same thing with long notes. So basically what I just had here was two bass trombones, French horns and trumpets. Generally, the French horns are going to sit all the way to the left side in film music, all right? So the tuba is the lowest instrument in the orchestra, and it's going to sound something like this. This particular part is a combination of tuba and bass trombone. The trombone itself, that family can be regular trombones, which are called tenor trombones. Then we're gonna have the bass trombones and the contrabass trombones. But generally, let's talk about tuba. The lowest instrument in the orchestra sounds like what I just played. Then we have the trombones that are going to sound like this. Or like this for short notes. Then we're gonna have horns, and sometimes the sound that we're gonna hear from horns is something like this. Now, the sound that you just hear is more like epic horns, like a 12 horns section, like a really big cinematic horns sound. As you hear, it's easy to identify the horns sound. Also, they sit to the left, and the rest of the brass sit to the right side, and that makes it easy to identify horns as opposed to, let's say, trumpets. But this big sound that you just heard, it's not quite realistic horns sound. Horns in general are going to sound more like this, just so you know. This is a typical 6 horns section. And finally, as I said, we've got the trumpets, right? So those are trumpets, long notes. The trumpets, the higher they go, the brighter they sound. And then the lower they go, the darker they sound. And the trumpets sound very loud. Usually trumpets can overpower the entire orchestra. All right, so we've covered the strings, brass, and now we're gonna talk briefly about woodwinds. So woodwinds are going to sound like this. Right, or woodwinds is a section that it's very colorful. It's not the most powerful section in the orchestra. It's actually the one that sounds the lowest in volume. And basically the most important instruments are going to be flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons. The flute sounds like this. It's gonna be one of the highest instruments in the woodwinds section. We're gonna have the piccolo that sounds higher in register. Essentially, the piccolo is sort of like a small flute. Then we're gonna have a flute. Oboe, double reed. Then we're gonna have the clarinet. This being the lowest note of the clarinet. Then we can also have the bass clarinet as the lower member of the clarinets family. That can go one octave lower. And then we're gonna have the bassoon. And again, we can have the contrabassoon. That's going to go one octave lower than the bassoon. Now, the same thing that we said about the double basses, right, that sound down an octave, the bassoon, the same thing, right? They placed the bassoon in the same range, but as you are performing the bassoon here, it's actually sounding down an octave in this particular library. All right, so we've covered every melodic instrument in the orchestra. Then we're gonna have the piano, the harp, right? Piano, everyone knows how a piano sounds. The harp is going to sound something like this. Right, the harp, sometimes we're gonna have glissandos. And then we're gonna have the percussion instruments. Let's talk about the three most important orchestral percussive instruments: the gran casa, the snare, and the timpani. So, gran casa, just a big drum, also known as a bass drum, sounds like this. You can play it louder as well. And then we're gonna have the snares. And one of the most important instruments in the orchestra, the timpani. That can do also swells and things like this, or louder swells. That's it. End of the video. There are more instruments, more like specific instruments, obviously, but those are the most important. To identify the instruments, watch this video, pay attention at the color of each one of the instruments that I showed you, and also see where they sit in the orchestra. You see that there are some instruments that sit in different positions. Generally, the most important thing is you're gonna have kind of like the highest strings, like the violins, to the left, the lower strings to the right. Then you're gonna have the brass generally to the right, horns to the left, even though here they are centered. Usually they sit more like here, right? And then we're gonna have kind of like woodwinds, center. Some of them will sound a little bit more to the left, others will sound a little bit more to the right. Sometimes they sit a little more to the right. And then the piano, harp, percussion, these can sit in different. Generally, the percussion is gonna be in the back of the orchestra. In a typical film music, like a scoring stage recording, they're gonna sit at the end because they are very loud. And that's it. Hopefully, this gave you a better understanding of the different instruments in the orchestra, and now you understand how they sound, where they sit, and also how they relate with the other instruments. Congrats! You watched the video till the end. Amazing! I put together my template. I downloaded the file and I uploaded it so you can download it for free. I'm talking about my orchestral template, meaning all the instruments loaded and how I've got it configured so I can put my hands on the keyboard and start composing. And not just that, but also my template is organized so it mixes the music automatically for you. So I added a link below, just click download, and also you'll be downloading lots of extra free stuff that I included in this kind of like bundle. The list of the libraries that I use, a mixing and mastering course that's usually paid, and I included this for free just through this link. Also lots of analyze the scores, Jason Bourne, Captain America, and so much more. Harry Potter, transcribed, analyzed, reduced, and then videos of myself kind of like recreating that style. If you don't read music, you can replicate the style step by step just by watching me. Alright, cool, that's all. Click the link below, download all that free stuff. thanks for your time, thanks for watching our videos. You're one of us. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, so YouTube reminds you whenever we publish these videos. We'll continue to do more and to bring value to the community. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.